Hey, how's it going, everyone? You're listening to Cerebral Cocktail, hanging with the crew here at Man's Mansion. It's me, Smiley, checking in.
And Lukey G has the shakes today. It was a long night.
That's not a tagline, folks. He really is shaking up.
Yeah, I woke up and I felt like I entered another dimension. Had yacked a little bit, wasn't that bad. You know, I'm pretty good at rallying, so as soon as I chug some soda real quick, that carbonation like activates it. It's like a super soaker coming from the back of my throat. But today it's just the two of us. We can make it if we try.
Your captains for today's flight.
Yes, sir. It's been fun recording with the whole house, but sometimes you gotta take it back a notch and just have a little one-on-one discussion about some crazy shit that's going on. And nothing is more crazy than the theory of aliens. Now,
Theory.
yeah, theory. Nothing is necessarily proven. Nothing is necessarily disproven. It's all up in the air, just like these UFOs, and we're trying to really evaluate everything that's happened over the past couple thousand years, because there's documents dating back to like 1500 BC.
Yeah, you could take it back to the very beginning of just civilizations and like things like that. So
Yeah, they there has always been some sort of mantra about the people who theorize about aliens and the activity of unidentified flying phenomena. And people like to think that you're just automatically crazy if you believe in aliens. It's a very touchy subject. I think a lot of that has to do with when Y2K came around and the whole technological thing came about. It was supposed to be the apocalypse, you know?
right.
And ever since then, anything in regards to interstellar activity or technological warfare or, you know, just shit that we don't understand has kind of been brushed under the rug a little bit. For a long time, aliens really impacted culture. Alien versus Predator, you know,
Yeah.
Star Wars.
Before zombies, it was aliens.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I feel like zombies is like that at that point, like that's impossible, you know.
Yeah.
But like aliens are like somewhat plausible, and the thing that makes it so interesting is that it's out of reach, but you can conceptualize it. We'll never, or not necessarily never, but we have yet to truly gain any sort of direct perspective or contact with aliens. But it's up in the air once again. We don't really know what's going on, and it's kind of scary, you know.
Yeah.
It's weird just to have that uneasy feeling of like what is going on up there. There's so much space, literally. There's
Literally.
so many
That's
galaxies.
like infinite. Space is literally infinite.
And we have no idea what the fuck is going on up there at all. Like, we couldn't even believe that we landed on the moon for a little bit. People still don't think we landed on the moon.
There's so much space. So in all the space, you have stars that emit light, and with the light, we're able to see what exists in that space. But statistically, even with all the stars, we are only able to see 20% of what exists out there. So 80% is dark matter. We don't know. We can't see it, so we don't know what's there. Like,
I forget what the term is. I don't know if it's like non-binary or something like that, but they say dark matter has no fundamental purpose, at least to what they can understand. But for something that consists and takes up so much of our atmosphere and the interstellars and all that, it's kind of hard to think that it doesn't serve a purpose, you know, in some form or fashion, whether it be like the energy of spirits or whether it be like waves being sent out from UFOs and life forms so far away. There's just something about it that we don't understand.
yeah. Well, on that point, you've heard of the movie Interstellar, Christopher Nolan, directed by. It has Matthew McConaughey.
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't know if you I've watched that movie. It's one of my favorite movies, but I've watched it countless times, and every time I watch it, I understand a little bit more. And you know, it does kind of quickly touch on the topic of ghosts, right? Something manipulating the environment around them. And I guess this is a spoiler. I don't know.
The
I don't
movie
know if
came
I
out
want to.
like fucking 6 years ago. Like
Yeah,
at this point, if
right.
you haven't seen it, don't bitch when someone tells you any part of the plot, because like I'd say there's like what's the window? Like I'd say like a year. Like if you don't see something within not even a year, like 6 months. If you don't see something within 6 months, it's like do you like
Being generous, I'd say like mm, a year.
yeah, because like at a certain point, like you're having a conversation with someone about a really good movie that like
Right.
just got an Oscar, and someone's like, "Oh, what the fuck, dude? I haven't seen it yet." It's like, well, did you really plan on seeing it? Because you still haven't.
Right,
So like, shut
right,
the
right.
fuck up. It's fine.
Yeah. But going back to the movie, yeah, it talks about ghosts. And it goes around full circle where it turns out to be that the ghost that they were talking about in the beginning was really him,
Mm-hmm.
but in this other realm of dimension that we don't know really
He was
exists,
trying to lead himself to.
He
What
was
was it?
trying to
He was like sending himself
basically help,
signals.
yeah, sending himself signals to do his thing, but also sending his daughter signals for
Mm-hmm.
her to figure out how to save the human race, I
Yeah,
guess.
dude, that tidal wave part where
Ooh,
dude,
yeah.
that just scares the shit out of me. I don't dream about like demons or like nothing crazy like that, but giant waves, giant like 500 feet tall. It crashes over me and then I just wake up. But like there's something about just a giant open sea that can cascade such a tremendous amount of force into this insane just wave that crashes down on you. It's honestly it's terrifying.
Yeah.
I don't know. I didn't
It's
explain that
definitely
well.
a scene. The visualization there is very, very, it can cause a lot of anxiety.
It's terrifying,
Yeah.
dude, because like it's almost like space. It's like once you enter that space, it's kind of like it's you and space itself.
Right.
It's like when you're in the water like that and a giant tidal wave is building up, it's like fuck.
Mm-hmm.
It's just me and this object that's about to literally
Yeah, like you
decapitate
have
me by
no,
force.
yeah,
And it's funny because people think of water as like something that's not really
fluid.
harmful. Yeah.
Right.
But if it crashes down on you at that speed, it feels like a fucking solid and it can break
It
your neck.
is. Yeah, absolutely.
That's why people that jump from a very high altitude and hit water wrong feel like they just landed on concrete, because water takes a second to actually spread its particles to
Right.
allow you to like be dissolved into it.
Right.
So if you just crash into it, it's like hitting a floor and then breaking through the floor.
Right.
It's not just like dipping your like toes into a pool.
Yeah.
But back to the aliens. So recently, amongst all of the pandemic crisis that's going on and the world as it continues to evolve around the coronavirus, the Pentagon released a couple videos, and these videos were taken by Navy men. I don't know.
Yeah, it's from what I understand, the footage was taken from Navy pilots that were training, and they were just out, and they happened to encounter these recordings, and somehow these videos a few years back leaked to the press.
Yeah, I remember when that happened.
Yeah, but it was neither confirmed or anything like. It took them up until they came up with a plan on how to handle, I guess, public relationally.
Yeah, because there's no real good way to tell people.
Right.
Because there's so much hysteria in the first place. It almost feels like they did this now because we're in the middle of so much shit that people do kind of just brush it off and they're like, yeah, whatever. We'll get to that later.
Yeah,
you know,
we
like
will.
when
We
all this is
will.
over.
But yeah, so it's very interesting because for years and years and years and years, it's been at least a party topic
Mm-hmm.
at the very least. Do aliens exist? What do you think? Do you think aliens are real?
I think that there's most certainly something out there. I don't think it's bug-eyed, gray,
Right.
like claymation figures like we see in the movies. I think it's, you know, you can't really put a pin on it because the possibilities are endless. Even if you just look at the Earth itself and the species that exist amongst us.
The species here that exist
Exactly.
evolved to tailored to here, to what happens here.
So what's the possibility for interstellar life? You know, like there's grizzly bears. They're fucking 13 feet tall, a couple thousand pounds, and then there's ants. There's so much possibility. You can't really even try to determine what an alien would look like. It's cool to have the idea of the green head with the big black eyes. Like, that's always been, like, the conspiratorial sort of image for everyone to digest.
The conventional alien.
Yeah, they don't want to steer too far off that path, because I feel like that, like, image kind of gives all of it an identity.
Right.
You know, to keep it
a way
alive.
To stigmatize it.
Yeah, it's like a logo of that belief.
Right.
So I don't think that they necessarily look like that or they act a certain way, but I think
you believe in the concept.
Yes, indeed, and you do as well.
Yeah. I mean, I've studied space. I studied astronomy. I've studied
astrology.
Also astrology. I do brush on.
Bullshit. That was a
joke. But definitely astronomy, the science of space, and even my professor at the time was very much like, you know, space is infinite, the possibilities are infinite, like Murphy's law, anything that can happen will happen, you know, like it's not impossible. And I mean, certain things are just a little too, I wouldn't say I'm superstitious, but you know,
yeah, I'm not superstitious either, to be clear. Like, I don't necessarily believe in, like, ghosts and stuff like that. I do believe in, like, the existence of energies and the manifestation of an entity based off of one's personal, the mind is very powerful, and you can think of some crazy shit and you can create that, you know, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's real to the rest of the world. Aliens, however, are something outside of oneself, something that is its own life form, that has a physical being, and it has unique characteristics, you know, physical characteristics. Right. It's not just something that's floating around, like, in the air somewhere.
Yeah.
Like, it's generally thought of, I mean, aliens could be invisible. Like, they could just be, like, waves of energy, per se.
Right.
But, like, that's the biggest difference, I feel, in, like, things like ghosts and things like aliens. Aliens, to me, are more plausible because of the lack of knowledge we have of the rest of the universe. You know, like, there's ghost shows and shit like that try to prove it, like, here on Earth. Ultimately, there's no proof for anything, really, but I think that the plausibility of aliens is much greater than that of ghosts, considering the amount of space that exists and the amount of possibilities for other life forms in the universe. But that being said, back to that video. So there was 3 videos released, and they are honestly pretty fucking crazy. And I posted them the other day on my Instagram. So 2004 and 2015 are the dates for these 3 clips.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know which one was when. But as you said before, they had been leaked. They had been leaked actually, I think, 2 times. And the first time, Blink-182's like lead singer or whatever has like an organization where they try to like debunk like aliens and UFOs and all that stuff, and they helped leak it the first time. I don't know in the other instance, but in both of them, the public wasn't necessarily sold on the videos, you know? And it's hard to be sold on something that appears for a little bit and then goes away, especially with everything that's possible with CGI and video editing and animation. But the Pentagon released these publicly a couple days, or actually like a couple weeks ago, I think now. And
the release of this?
Yeah.
I think it's been within this past week. It hasn't been that long.
That's what I figured I knew it was pretty recent. But I thought that it would be interesting to talk about today just because of the relevance of kind of the evolution of the universe at hand and how much crazy shit is going on, you know? These videos show UFOs that are traveling at very high speeds, upwards of like 700 miles per hour to like 1,000.
Against the wind.
Against the wind. And that's the part that sold me on it. It had like it had a backwards rotation against the wind going upwards of like 1,000 miles an hour.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't look like anything that I've ever seen before. You know, in the second video, it's pretty much a dot that is traveling at immense speeds, and they tried to catch it. They followed it for a second. That's when you hear them go, "Oh, woo, we got it!" You know, they were tripped out. You know, like
Right.
these are people that are in the military that see crazy shit like that. They see all different types of shit just going through the atmosphere. They have to monitor to make sure there's no hostile threats in a given perimeter. They have to make sure that the area is secure as far as like the radar and what they're picking up on their like the audio waves and everything. And the footage is just, it's crazy. Their reaction and just the sheer like proof that I feel like this enlists us.
Mhm.
It's not something that I had ever I haven't seen any footage like this before. There is footage out there, and there's many experiences that we'll get into, but this is raw. This is something that was put out by the government, who you can't always trust. Let me clarify, but at the same time, when something comes from the Pentagon like this, you take it seriously, because they wouldn't just put it out there for shits and giggles, you know?
No, but they could do it to cover something up, to as a smokescreen.
Yeah,
It's
that's
definitely a
true.
possibility.
It does take away some of the attention from everything else at hand, like Kim Jong-un being ill, quote unquote.
Yeah.
And
I read somewhere that they were like, Kim Jong Un's the only one to survive a TMZ death.
dude, it's crazy because TMZ is like the fakest news outlet, and it's just full of shit. But they always are like the first ones to be like, Kobe died. You know, like that's
Yeah.
what I saw reported first, and I was like, it's TMZ, it has to be bullshit. But it's not. You know, like they're fairly accurate.
Yeah, TMZ isn't necessarily bullshit in the sense that it's fake news. It's
Yeah.
just irrelevant most of the
No,
time.
that's true.
Is more what I would call it.
It's a lot of embellished information too. They try to take something and
Do you know what
expand
TMZ
it.
stands for?
Mm.
It's the 30-mile zone. So I don't know. I think it's somewhere in Hollywood or wherever they're located, and then it's a 30-mile zone of just
Whatever they can find.
yeah, it's like the hot spot of LA.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
All right. So, a more recent and kind of relevant encounter of the aliens that pairs up with the video that was recently released by the Pentagon. David Fravor, I believe is how it's pronounced, was a Navy pilot who was off the coast of San Diego, and they were training on a training mission about 100 miles out into the Pacific, when all of a sudden the radio crackled a little bit, and they weren't really sure what it was. So they had contacted base, and they said that they need to go check what it is to ensure that it's not like a threat
Right.
or an incoming attack. And so they go out, or he flies out, and he tries to see what it is. He was tracking the craft, and the object suddenly appeared at 80,000 feet, and then it hurtled toward the sea, stopping at 20,000, and then it began to hover. So they get a little bit closer, and they have to kind of keep their distance, you know, just to make sure that, you know, nothing crazy is about to happen. But he tried to follow it, and they're explaining that basically the velocity at which it was turning and what it was doing to the winds and to the water was all very uneasy. He said that the waves kind of were frothy. The water was almost foaming as if it were boiling. The winds were really intense. It accelerated like nothing he had ever seen, is a quote from what he had said. And basically, they tried to do as much as they could to get as close as they could, but they couldn't really keep up with it. It kind of just disappeared. And so they were supposed to go to a rendezvous point 60 miles out from where they were. And then the radio operator comes in and he goes, "Hey, that thing is at your cap point already within minutes." They were 40 miles away, and in less than a minute, that thing had already arrived at the cap point. They saw it on the radar, and then all of a sudden it was just gone. It disappeared out of nowhere. But They were chasing it for a while. They got a little close. They saw that the environmental impact it had, whatever energy it was giving off,
Mm-hmm.
whether that be some sort of like interstellar alloy that reacts with the winds and water or whatever. But it just took off
Wow.
at speeds that we aren't even close to getting to with any sort of
Yeah.
like plane or car or anything. And that to me is pretty insane. That's like that is in itself is kind of evidence just by
Kind of evidence.
it's sheer evidence. If you go by the physics of it all,
Right.
the fact that that object had an instant impact on the waves below them, and then shot out, disappeared, and while they were going back to like where they were supposed to meet, it had already beat them about a minute later, and that's fast. I
Yeah.
don't know how fast it
That's humanly impossible at the
exactly. I
moment.
don't know how fast it had to have gone in order to get there that quickly,
Yeah.
but that's really fucking fast, dude.
Mm-hmm.
And 60 miles is far as fuck, even with a plane.
Yeah.
So that was one of the more recent encounters. He has an interview with Joe Rogan where he kind of talks about it,
Yeah.
and he talks about just the lights that it gave off and like what he felt.
And his personal intuition.
Yeah, exactly. He had been a part of the Navy for a long time, and he had never seen any such thing like this. And his thought was he wanted to fly it, because like what do you want to do when you're a pilot? You want to fly the coolest thing.
Right.
And in his eyes, what he had seen from the craft, even though he didn't get a great look at it, they do have thermal imaging. They have a small video online. Nothing's really said, but you can see the kind of glow around it.
Yeah.
And he said it was just something that he had never really came close to even experiencing before.
Well, I imagine.
Yeah, but I mean, that's just kind of, that's interesting in itself. That's something that I had recently found out. But these instances go back hundreds and hundreds and thousands of years, dude.
Exactly. There's record of alien activity for centuries, like you said, like just going back into the very beginning of human civilization and caveman eras, when the first drawings depicted aliens.
Mm-hmm.
It goes back a while. And
In the Roman Empire, I think it was like 400 BC.
mm-hmm.
There's like recollections of flaming discs in the sky, just floating up there and just kind of chilling.
It's funny you bring that up. I found an article. I didn't keep it because I was like, I don't know if we'll really touch on this, but you brought it up exactly. So it talks about how there's like deformed alien skulls in Roman Empire ruins
Mm-hmm.
that have been discovered, and they kind of look like cone heads, like really big skulls, right? Really, really interesting skeleton structure, kind of similar to humans, but like the teeth look a little bit bigger.
Mm-hmm.
Like it kind of just looks a little more massive,
Mm-hmm.
and it's crazy. Like I didn't really know there was a significance in the Roman Empire, and
Yeah, if you look at a period of about 1000 BC to like 1500 BC, there's several sightings of like alien life,
right,
and seeing like bright lights in the sky at night and
mm-hmm.
like discs of fire and very very advanced what would be technology for that time,
Right.
because they don't have anything like that. We didn't have anything like that until like 100 years ago,
Right, right.
and that brings me to the point of like what would they be like in that sense? And I feel like they would be more technologically advanced,
Yeah.
because we talked a little bit about the form of them and everything. And I don't know, as far as like personality wise, would they be like nice? Would they be mean? Would they probe your ass, or would they like take you out to dinner?
Yeah.
But I think regardless, they have access to stuff that we don't understand,
Right.
because the universe is literally millions of years old, and there's not going to be a single species that evolves in the way that humans did and be the only one of that kind within the millions and millions of miles that
Right.
exist.
Yeah. It's
So
infinite. Literally, that you can't put a number on it. It's infinite.
inside of that, the possibility for thousands of species,
Right. Right. Right.
different timelines.
The concept is the same. The measurement
Yeah, exactly.
was a little. Yeah. But.
But what I was referring to, the fiery discs, is 1440 BC. According to the Toli Papyrus, the scribes of the pharaoh Thutmose III, there were fiery discs floating around in the sky, and that's one of the earliest recollections as BC began to, because it goes in reverse, it gets
Right.
lower. There was a couple different instances within the Roman Empire where there was a fine rain resembling silver descending from the clear sky. There was a spark that fell from a star and grew like in size because it was so high up. They said that it got to the size of the moon and then pulled back and went up into the sky. And this was all in the Roman Empire,
Right.
which is to me very interesting because they were very progressive
Right.
in that sense. And I do feel like if there were to be aliens, they would probably spectate that of the more advanced cultures
Right.
on a different planet. Do they give a fuck about like the poor people, like the non-advanced cultures? Probably not, honestly. The only thing that they would do with them is probably take advantage and use them for like experiments and stuff like that. But I think at that point,
It's a little imperialistic in thinking.
yeah. But I mean, if you were an alien, would you come to Earth and be like, all right, I'm gonna go to the set?
How could we know any aliens' intentions? Like,
No, for sure. Well,
You
what do
know.
you think their intentions would be?
I don't know. It could be just the natural resource of the earth, whatever they need. It could be that they want to study civilization, but they don't know the difference between a rich society and a poor society. They don't know the difference between an educated society and an
Theoretically,
uneducated
though,
society.
because if they're educated beings themselves, they know that you have that intuition of like knowing who knows what they're doing, versus not. Like you could, if they came to Earth and they went to Rome at that time, compared to like, I don't know, Native American cultures that dated way, way, way back. That's different as far as technology goes because they were more well constructed. They had.
But you gotta reference it to its time, because even in its time, ancient Native American civilizations had technology more advanced than anything else, They were the empires, and then it kind of just eventually evolved. So I wouldn't... It's just a very interesting take. It's a very hot take you got there.
I don't know. I feel like if I was an alien and I went to a different planet, I would be down for the most advanced culture that I could find to try and... if there's something that maybe my species had missed along the way, find that, or mine them for their resources and their intellectual properties and things like that.
So you would have to say that if you were an alien and your purpose were to go and
research,
right, it would all have to be subjective, because you couldn't go to another planet and be like, oh, this is your most advanced culture, this is not. Like,
It is subjective, but that would be my personal mission. Like if I go on vacation, I want to go to the nicest hotel. I don't want to stay in a hostel. You know what I mean? Like there's more to experience when you're observing a certain culture, and that's why I personally feel that a majority of these accounts from very early BC to early AD, or late BC to early AD, was the Roman Empire. But as time progresses, there is a mass quantity of UFO sightings and alien encounters between like 1940 and 1950. I see about 15 different instances in which there was some sort of sighting or some sort of interaction. And I want to go to one of the earliest American ones would be Roswell, New Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
A weather balloon, or what they call a weather balloon, crashed outside of Roswell. And there was a guy, and he went out there, and he looked around at the stuff. He said it was like metal and like tinfoil and sticks and shit. And at first they thought it was aliens, but the government was very quick to be like, oh no, it was a weather balloon. But from what he had understood, they kind of took all the stuff from the event, like all of the debris, and they kept it. They didn't just like toss it out, you
Right.
know, like they took that shit. Like they
Yeah.
closed off the area and they took all the debris. I don't know if they wanted to study it or what it was, but it's kind of suspicious to say, "Oh, it's just this," and then
Yeah.
to not just like throw it away. You know,
Right.
like the fact that they went in and retrieved their stuff. He kept some of it, but there's also a lot of kind of debate over Roswell and what happened. But that was kind of the first.
Alien, American alien encounter.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
But
very interesting.
they initially said that it was like a flying disc, and it kind of became a whole conspiracy theory. Um, but as far as we know, it is debunked. But that was kind of what gained a lot of traction as far as observing UFOs
Yeah.
and how we were going to try and pursue the, I don't know, the discovery of extraterrestrial
Yeah.
beings. Another one, the Gorman dogfight. So, in North Dakota, there was a pilot. He was in the National Guard, and he was flying above a football game. And he noticed that there was a Piper Cub, which is a type of plane,
Yeah.
that was below him. And then out into the distance, to the west, he saw something. He looked for the outline of like a wing
Mhm.
to determine if it was a plane or whatever. And he couldn't see anything. And so he radioed in to see if they had picked anything up on the radar, if they were aware that there was something else in the atmosphere, and they had nothing on the radar at all. And so he goes after it. He goes full throttle, 400 miles an hour, and then realizes that it's going too fast for him to catch it. And so he approached it head on at 5,000 feet, and then the object flew over his plane at a distance of about 500 feet. He recalls it as a ball of light that blinked and like kept getting bigger. He lost sight of it, and then all of a sudden he saw it, and it made a 180 turn and came back at him, and then it just goes up, and it goes on a steep climb at about 14,000 feet. His P-51 stalled, and the object was like 2,000 feet above him.
Mhm.
And he kept trying to get closer to it, but at that point it was pretty much impossible. His whole point in this is that the way that the object was traveling, that acceleration with the turns and the very sudden and abrupt changes in velocity
Mhm.
is basically impossible if someone's manning that craft to stay alive while they're doing it.
Right.
Because you would break your fucking neck trying
Yeah.
to do that shit at like 500 to 600 miles an hour. His aircraft couldn't even get to that speed. And he couldn't even get to this like the steepness of it. He couldn't climb up like that. But as far as his recollection, that object was traveling fine. It showed no sign of like deterioration from the movements and maneuvers that it was making.
Yeah.
He said he even blacked out from excessive speed because at a certain point,
Right.
if you're
Right.
going so fast, there's like a lack of
All the
oxygen and you just
torque.
knock the fuck out.
Yeah.
That's scary as shit too.
Yeah.
To knock out like that in the middle of just flying. That was one that I had read that is very interesting because I think that the most controversial part of all of it, while a lot of these have been like quote unquote debunked,
Right.
is the rate at which these crafts are traveling or these aircrafts are traveling.
Yeah.
Because as far as physics go, if you're following the laws of inertia, objects and vessels don't make sudden movements at that amount of speed.
Yeah.
They're not able to withstand that amount of acceleration and turn cleanly.
It goes back to being humanly impossible.
Exactly.
You know?
That's why I don't think that it could have been anything even close to human.
Yeah.
You know? And again, something it had been something that was like debunked, and they said that was a weather balloon. So there's a little bit of a common theme.
It's their scapegoat.
Yeah, no, exact. Well, I mean, what else would you say? You know, like there's nothing really that you could have to cover that up.
Right.
Like, how do you explain an object that's going upwards of like 600 miles an hour that in a split second just shoots up into the sky?
Yeah.
You know, like that shit does not make sense at all.
Yeah. So I got a question. Do you think aliens, in the possibility that they appeared in the earlier times and interacted with human species,
Mm-hmm.
is it possible that they advanced our evolution technologically?
So as far as like ancient civilizations, I think that that is very much possible
Mm-hmm.
because you look at things like the Stonehenge,
Yep.
you look at the pyramids, all of these things that have kind of been under the microscope of
Like, how was it possible in your time? You
how
know?
like the possibility of its relation to interstellar life. Now, I don't know much about this stuff, so I'll turn that over to you.
Right. Yeah. I got an article here that talks about. I mean, I feel like when you're first introduced to aliens, you definitely hear about aliens in the pyramids and aliens, just different kind of phenomena that, like you said, the Stonehenge. Um, so I guess it's curious to know what kind of role that these things had, because they're these gigantic phenomena, right? In Peru, they have these. If you were to go up into the sky, there's these type of hieroglyphs, right? But they've been there for centuries and centuries and centuries. That when it first originated, there's no possible way, because they didn't have planes back then.
Yeah.
There was no way to draft it.
There was no technology even close. They didn't even have cars.
Exactly. So just things like that, and what's their meaning? There's a theory on the pyramids. In Egypt, there's apparently some pyramids in the Asian continent, and the pyramids in South America
Like
with
the Mayan.
yeah. Apparently, they all line up, and people want to draw a coincidence, or
How do you mean they line up?
like they're all built the same way. So you know how the Egyptian pyramids, there's three and they're placed a certain way?
Yeah.
Apparently all the other pyramids are placed the same way too. And if you compare their place on the map as a whole, it creates this other kind of very significant shape. And it's just very interesting because I don't know. I don't believe in coincidence.
Yeah.
I don't think things just happen out of nowhere. There's definitely a reason. So it's just very interesting. I believe in aliens. I believe they have come down before. I think they have interacted with civilizations that we now deem more advanced than the rest.
Now, do you think that like, because I think there is possibility that they contacted ancient civilizations.
Yeah.
And when the Earth was kind of early in its development, but more recently, do you think that, like, of course we've seen shit,
Right.
but do you think they've contacted humans at all?
I think so. I think abductions. I mean, I don't necessarily discredit their existence. I don't discredit that people have encountered face-to-face aliens.
Yeah.
And
They're like, I saw bright lights and there was someone standing right above me, and then all of
Right.
a sudden they just stuffed my asshole.
and then you have the common debate of like, copycat stories. Well, the reason why all the stories are so consistent is because one person tells it one way, so then they're like, oh, well, I'm going to tell my story one way. Yeah. But realistically, more often than not, that's not the case in general. More often than not, like, I'm not saying it's impossible or it doesn't happen at all, but more often than not, people are being as honest as they can. Now, is there certain cases where maybe people just aren't mentally fit and it becomes a phenomena that exists as a response to somebody's mind, like you were mentioning earlier.
Yeah, like the manifestation of energy into an entity.
Right. So, there's other options as to, what could explain, but I feel like a bigger part of that is actually it is real. I think people have been experimented on. I think,
Yeah, there's been some sort of contact. Well, for the record, you know who Edward Snowden is?
yeah.
So Edward Snowden, for anyone that doesn't know, is the whistleblower of what is the NSA?
It was like, yeah, like
I believe the National Security
classified
Agency.
intelligence.
Yeah,
And
basically how America had a breach of
their
information on
surveillance.
everybody.
Yeah.
How companies were selling data to foreign countries. Like AT&T got in a lot of trouble around that time for selling people's information. He was a whistleblower, and he took asylum in, I think, the Ukraine for a little bit.
I know he's in Russia now.
Yeah, yeah. He I think he's been there for a while, but
Yeah.
he jumped from country to country, and he's like a really interesting guy. He worked in the CIA.
Yeah.
He had access to a lot of stuff, and when he leaked all that information, people kind of lost their shit, you know.
People were just upset that, he didn't follow orders.
The WikiLeaks that he had was like hundreds, if not like 1,000 pages long. It was about the global surveillance disclosures and how people's information was being leaked, and we were being watched, and there was no sense of privacy among anybody.
Because this was post 9/11, right?
Yeah, this was, I think, 2012, 2013, something like that. But the reason I bring him up is that he had a lot of information at his hands. Like, a lot of information. And so he pretty much came out and just said, chemtrails aren't real, one. I want to tell that to everybody. Chemtrails aren't fucking real.
Chemtrails?
Chemtrails are not real.
What are those?
Chemtrails are, they're emissions that are given off by aircrafts that they believe the government uses to poison people or emit shit into the air to harm or help the environment, depending on your stance on it. It's like a really big like meth head thing. They're all like, when you see those like
a lot of meth heads?
Yes. When I live with like 4. When you see those streaks of like gas in the sky from jets and shit, people think that's like a chemtrail.
Yeah. I understand.
So he said chemtrails aren't real. Global warming is real. And the United States does not have anything recorded as far as interaction with alien life.
Yeah.
But he said that also, like, that doesn't necessarily mean it's not real.
Yeah. Or that record of it isn't just somewhere else in a completely different...
Well, he had a vast amount of accessibility amongst the CIA network.
That's interesting. How do you get that much clearance?
Because he had been working for that. He was a contractor, and he worked for the NSA, and he was there for a long time. He's a really smart dude, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, he was someone that, I don't know if he, like, held the servers or if he kept them running or whatever it was.
Mm-hmm.
But he had a lot of access, and he called his memoir The Permanent Record because there's a broad network of information that exists within the CIA that holds information about climate change, about chemtrails, about aliens, about all that shit. And he did an interview with Joe Rogan recently.
Yeah.
And he said, I know you want there to be aliens. I know Neil deGrasse Tyson wants there to be aliens. There probably are. But there's nothing that he's aware of. And again, he has like level 5 clearance type of shit. Like if you listen to his interview with Joe Rogan, he gets really in depth with all of it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think the U.S. is hiding anything necessarily. If they are, they're doing a really good job at it because working for the CIA and being a contractor and within the servers, you have access to pretty much everything.
Mm-hmm.
So at that point, it would have to be buried somewhere deep, you know.
Yeah.
But in contrast to that, there have been, as far as I know, 2 programs in the United States in which they try to research UFOs and aliens.
Yeah.
The first one is Project Blue Book. Project Blue Book was announced in it was terminated in 1969. It had been around from 47 to 69, and there was a total of 12,000 sightings that they investigated.
Yeah.
I think it's 701 are still unidentified. So they had
Jesus.
put in a lot of time, money, and resources into being like, okay, well, this was a weather balloon,
Right.
this was a plane, blah, blah, blah. But there's still 700 that they don't know what it was.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that is a lot. And for everyone that wants to read a little bit deeper into the topic, these files are public. They made these files public online, and it's like over 2,000 pages of shit just about the UFO experiences that had occurred, debunking some of them, and also admitting to some of them being
unidentifiable.
Kind of creepy, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that another really interesting one that had happened back in like what year was it? 1967. It was at Falcon Lake in Canada. Stan McAuliffe is the son of this guy who, I forget what was his job. He was a mechanic, and he liked to go out to Falcon Lake just to like absorb nature, you know, do his thing. And that's about 150 kilometers east of Winnipeg. And they usually go out there because there's a lot of quartz and silver. Now, he went out there one night and some shit happened. What his son observed when he got home and saw his dad was that he walked into the room, and there's a picture of him. He has a grid on his stomach burnt into his stomach.
Oh, wow.
And he was pale, and he wasn't moving, and the rooms, he said, smelled like sulfur and like a burnt motor. And his dad didn't get up for like a couple of days or something like that. But Stefan, the father, the one that actually experienced this, he was near a vein of quartz along the Precambrian Shield, and he was 51. He was a little bit of an older gentleman.
Yeah.
He heard some geese, and they were like, "Meow, meow, meow."
Right.
You know, some shit was like moving around. And he looked up, and he saw two cigar-shaped objects with a reddish glow hovering about 45 miles away. Meters away. 45 meters away. I was like, I got it. One descended, landing on a flat section of rock, and it had like more of a disc shape.
Yeah.
The other stayed in the air and then flew off. He thought that it was a U.S. experimental aircraft, and he decided to approach it. That's when he blacked out.
That's always interesting.
He recalled warm air and the smell of sulfur as he got closer. Whirring sounds of motors, and the air was hissing as well. He said he called out, offering mechanical help, because he thought it was the military.
Yeah.
He's like, I got these guys. Like, I'm about to get a contract with the government. You know? He said there were voices that were quiet, but they didn't answer to him.
Yeah.
You know? He tried a couple different languages because he is Polish, so he tried speaking Russian and German to them. There was nothing. And he went closer, and it was metal, the ship. Didn't have any seams on it. Didn't have any bolts or anything like that. There was a bright doorway, and he put on welding goggles to try and protect his eyes while chipping at the rocks and all that.
Yeah.
He saw light beams and panels of various colored flashing lights, but could not see anyone or anything. And he touched the craft, and when he touched it, he melted his fingertips of the glove that he was wearing. Then it started to turn counterclockwise, and he noticed a panel that contained a grid of holes. He was struck in the chest by a blast of air or gas that pushed him back and set his shirt and cap on fire. And then he pulled his shit off. He was all disoriented. He made his way back to his motel and caught a bus back to Winnipeg. And then he was treated at the hospital for burns. And that grid-like pattern on his
Yeah.
chest. For weeks after, he suffered from diarrhea, headaches, blackouts, and weight loss. Weight
Wow.
loss. That's fucking crazy to me.
Yeah.
Because the dude, like, the whole thing seems kind of weird, but this picture of him with that grid on his chest is, like, really fucking creepy.
Eerie.
You know? Yeah, it's really eerie. And with his son coming in, and because I feel like with, like, alien experiments and shit like that, testing on humans, you always associate it with some form of pain or some kind of...
Just like,
There's some...
what would it be called? Probing on your body.
Yeah,
Just
yeah. Like, you always think of probing. There's always a mark that's left, you know? Like, there's always a mark.
Mm-hmm.
And for him, it was this little grid on his chest. And then the fact that he got sick for a couple weeks is kind of more intense, because that just gives you the idea that that object is probably giving off a mass amount of radiation.
Oh,
whatever
yeah.
it was using to power it, whether it be some sort of interstellar material or whatever it is.
Right.
It made the dude sick, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So at that point, you have a couple counts from the early 1900s of just different shit going on, you know?
Yeah.
That, to me, was probably one of the most interesting ones.
Yeah, that's...
But then you kind of look at other accounts. And recently, in 2017, there was, like, this big rock that appeared in the Milky Way kind of out of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
They named it Aumwamwa, which is a Hawaiian word for scout or messenger.
Mm-hmm.
And they said it was a rock.
Yeah.
But the thing was that they were observing it as it was traveling through space.
Mm-hmm.
And the acceleration of it was kind of what threw them off a little bit, like the movement of it. It spun every 8 hours. The brightness of it changed by a factor of 10. They don't have a photo or anything like that, but they said it looks like cigar, kind of almost pancake-like, which goes hand in hand.
Yeah.
50 years prior to the same shit that the dude saw at Falcon Lake.
Yeah.
So there is some sort of, like, general consensus as far as how to identify these things.
Right.
Usually it's very bright lights, it's horrible smells,
Mm-hmm.
it's like a disc or cigar shape.
Right.
And sometimes there's also, like, you can hear the like beeps and stuff like
Yeah.
that. You know, I don't know how accurate that is. That's very, like, movie-esque.
Right.
But there are there's those characteristics that are kind of consistent throughout the years that they make you think harder about how people are like, oh, well, to be clear, a UFO is an unidentified flying object.
Yeah.
It
It's
doesn't
a general
have to be
term.
an alien. It
Right.
can be a lot of different things.
A different nation's,
Exactly.
flight aviation.
Yeah, it could be a spy drone or some shit like
Yeah.
that. But the fact that in 1967 there was a dude by a lake where there's heavy amounts of ores, silver and quartz, and he sees these objects there, and then he suffers from illness, and then they're able to observe a similar object that had along the same line of capabilities that what he had observed that day at Falcon Lake, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I think that it's not necessarily another country's drone or whatever.
Right.
Is that over 50, 60 years, there has been a couple different factors that have played into every encounter that people have had.
Yeah.
More recently, though, outside of everything that has happened over the past couple of thousand of years, it's a crazy topic. There's not a lot of concrete evidence as far as, like, physical materials that we have been able to study and try and observe chemical structures and radiation levels and stuff like that. But there was the Blue Book project, and then there was the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, which began in 2007 and dissolved in 2012. $600 billion was the Defense Department's budget overall, not for just that program. To the $22 million that they spent on the Advanced Aerospace Program, they don't know where the money went. There's no record of what they spent the money on. So
That's
5 years go by, and there's no reports as to the progress that this program is making in trying to contact interstellar
like
beings.
no accreditation or
Exactly. It's just $22 million and then dissolve the program. That's it. So some people still think that it's going on. And I think that is very much possible. I think the bigger part is, where did the fucking money go, A? And B, what is the world gonna do? How are we gonna react to all of this? How are we supposed to have that faith in our government if they're not willing to share things like this? If this kind of stuff continues to come up where they make these programs and they research shit, eventually the program gets dissolved, but there's a lot of unanswered questions.
Right.
At a certain point, I understand that money's not endless, but A, there has to be some sort of progress that was made. And B, the money went somewhere. And in Blue Book, the 701 unidentified objects still remain.
Yeah.
So it's like there's a good amount of data that kind of proves that at least it seems like someone's kind of messing with us.
Yeah.
Do you think that the Pentagon releasing those videos now is to deter us? Do you think it's because they think we're ready?
Honestly, I'm so confused as to why they released the videos at all, what their purpose was, because it's a big deal for the Navy, the Pentagon to declassify something like this. You know, they're usually so hush-hush about it. And then you read in their statement and it says something like we didn't want to, we wanted to stop the confusion of the general public. And it's like, when has that ever been your priority, you know? So that just kind of brings me to the motives. I honestly think this specific instance is a smokescreen for all the more significant things at the moment. But I definitely don't think it means that they're not real or that it's fake or, you know, none of that. It's crazy to think of. And I couldn't even tell you. It would honestly depend on whatever that alien being, whatever their motive is. If their motive is to come here and, you know, wipe out and destroy and, you know, murder, whatever. Pillage. Like, I mean, yeah, you know, I don't want that. I would be terrified.
No, 100%.
But also, you know, I think it is kind of important to be open-minded about it, you know, but it's hard because you can't sit here and say that you would understand this alien being because you don't even know if you have the same type of consciousness, you know, there's so many different factors that play into it.
Yeah, it's almost, isn't it kind of arrogant to be like, oh, the aliens are coming to us?
Yeah,
you know, like, are we that fucking important to where aliens would even want to come to Earth?
Yeah, and space is so big, you know, and we significant, like, if you size us up to majority of things in space, we're not that big.
No, we're not at all.
Earth
is a small planet. We're smaller than a majority of planets in the Milky Way galaxy.
That's what I'm saying. You know, we're not as significant, but
we are because we have life, though. That's the difference. I feel like that's where the attraction from aliens would come from. Like, I hate the idea of, like, people thinking that aliens would be so amazed by us and think that we're so fucking cool, you know? Like, realistically, they're more advanced because we've been seeing shit in the sky. They don't see shit in the sky at home, you know?
Yeah.
Like, we're the ones that are, like, speculative about all of it.
Exactly. It's more our curiosity than theirs.
And, like, do they want us to know? Because the thing is, like, there have been these interactions, and I feel like if the mindset was to keep it a secret, then they would kill a lot of these people. And that's kind of where some of the debate comes up, is like, if their intentions are this, then when they react this way and wanting to make sure the word doesn't get out. Or are they, like, dangling us by strings right now and trying to just kind of play us to see what they can do?
I think more that, because in the stories that I've heard, you know, as credible as the stories can be, they never kill.
No.
You know, if anything, it's an experiment gone too far that the human body can't handle. But they never kill, you know. It's never a situation. I mean, there are abductions, though, where bodies just get picked up and then there's no recollection of them. But then there's also a problem with that in general with just people taking people. So yeah, it's all interesting. I couldn't even fathom the possibility because it would all have to be very specific situational, you know. It depends what aliens we encounter first.
Mm-hmm. I mean, there's the like everyone has their different idea of what aliens would be like.
Right.
But can you even say what would aliens be like if there's probably more than one type of alien, you know?
Yeah.
Like there could be good aliens and there could be bad aliens. There
With all different intentions. It's like you were mentioning earlier what your intentions would be personally if you were to go and explore the depths of the space, you know. You know, maybe there are other alien beings out there that have the same, or maybe they just need resources, or, you know, there's could be so many different motives and so many motives that we don't even comprehend because like I said, it's just all different. We don't have we don't know because we haven't experienced. We can't even, like, you know, the possibilities.
they're
Something,
endless.
yeah.
There's no way to really even have an expectation of what these beings might be like.
Right.
And with the state the world is in right now, I could if there were to be like bad aliens, I feel like they would fuck us up pretty quick right now.
We're very vulnerable.
Yeah, no, for sure. But I don't. That's why I also don't necessarily think that if they were to be real, that they are like inherently evil per se.
Right.
Because like at this point, they would have had the opportunity to take us out.
Yeah.
Multiple times.
Yeah.
Because if you can fly in between galaxies and you can maneuver ships like that, if you can create stuff that gives off such a reaction to one guy that creates burns and like such a toxic smell,
Yeah.
they have a bomb that could probably blow up the whole planet, you know.
Absolutely.
But it's just it hasn't happened. I don't think it necessarily ever will happen, but it's kind of just crazy to think about what the archetype would be.
Yeah.
Like who is an alien? What is an alien? Do they have emotions? Like are they like humans in that sense, or are they purely just kind of organisms, you know, like not like animals, because like animals have
It
feelings,
could be any.
but
It could be though. There could be a whole spectrum of the possibility of what alien could be. Like, you know, that's the thing. It's not just one form. It's an infinite form. It could be a form that we don't even know exists. Is what I mean. You know, when I say all of that, because why are we so arrogant as a species to say that it would all be similar to us? Like, it'll all be different wherever things come from.
yeah, I mean there's like a narrow train of thought when it comes to interstellar life and the experience of what aliens would be like, but I just think that at this point, as far as us finding them, it's not gonna happen
Yeah.
at all. Give it like
Unless they want to be discovered.
no, that's what I'm saying,
yeah.
is that the way that we would find them is if they find us. And if they
Right.
present themselves to us, I don't think that, in any sense, we're going to be ready to travel between galaxies for millions of miles like that for another 5,000 years.
Yeah.
Because that's, you have to take into account the duration of a trip to try and find such beings,
Yeah.
and the science and physics behind going from galaxy to I don't know how that works.
Yeah.
You know, like space is fucking huge. So to get to another galaxy, I think they say right now it would take you like a good 20 or 30 years to get in between galaxies.
And I think that's at light speed.
Yeah,
and light speed's
exactly.
the fastest speed that we know, so that's like years. But time doesn't exist. You know how the time relevance, or
Yeah,
I think is what it's called. It's all crazy. Definitely we're going to have more conversations on space and aliens. Any closing thoughts for you?
Just don't be ignorant, please. Just let the
Open
world,
your mind.
let the world be what it is. That in itself, which is a mystery, and it's good to have theories. It's good to hypothesize and have these
Good to
conversations.
conversate. Yeah.
Exactly. If you're gonna be closed-minded about such things, then humans don't evolve and society doesn't evolve. At that point, it creates a sense of stagnant behavior in which we will never reach our true potential. So never ever shut an idea out just because you think it's a little too far-fetched, because If you told people 1,000 years ago that we would have giant metal containers that carried people from continent to continent, they would have told you were a fucking nut. And here we are today with 3 UFO videos released by the Pentagon. And that's what happens as time goes on, as we discover more and more stuff that kind of elaborates on the case of these interstellar activities and anything above and beyond that. So stay safe and stay informed.
Yeah, with that said, stay tuned. We got more episodes on the way. Thanks for hanging out with us, Man's Mansion crew. I'm Smiley, that's Lukey G. Checking out.
Peace.
Checking out.
Peace.
Checking out.
Peace.
Checking